How funny is this? I could be meaner. Here lately, I've had a lot of fun making these little quilts with different sayings. And today I'm going to walk you through this pattern, which is foundation paper pieced. Super simple, three little segments that come together. I actually glued my three segments together and made this as one longer foundation. I could be meaner. What's really great about this pattern, you could hang this on the fridge. I have a little quilt stand I bought at the Mid-Atlantic Quilt Festival that slides right through there. You could put a dowel through there. Lots of different ways to hang it. But what's really great about this is this panel here. If you didn't like the saying that comes with this pattern, you could do all kinds of stuff with it, right? So I have another one. But it lends perfect space for all kinds of stuff. So I made this and then embroidered this right in the middle. Fun fact, I don't care. Is my perimenopause showing with these? I don't know. Then I did one that says gone fishing. How great is that? Please be patient with me. I'm from the 1900s. This one is hilarious. I saw that on a t-shirt. And then, of course, Matthews, Virginia, you could do names. You could do simple applique shapes like hearts. You could do an applique word that's nice and big like home or home sweet home or welcome home. All kinds of stuff could fit right in there. But this goes together really, really quickly. Super simple. And I think you could even take the measurements from the front page of this pattern if you're not into paper piecing, and just piece this together, right? But I like the foundation paper piecing because it gives me nice, perfect straight lines every time because I'm just sewing right on a line. So this pattern also comes with an SVG for the words of this pattern. I could be meaner. Y'all, these are small, tiny little letters. There is a mirror image of these letters. If you don't have a cutting machine, you could trace and cut them out. Or like a real quick, easy way to do these words without hand cutting them out, if you don't have like a scan and cut or a Cricut, would be to trace them with a fabric marker. That'd be a fast, easy way to get this look without hand cutting these little letters, right? So the cutting machine really saved me a lot of tedious work cutting out my letters. And guess what? On this one, in the video, I'm going to show you how I sewed them down. I sewed them down with the meandering quilting right over top. And all of the edges I did not tediously sew down. So there's another quick way to finish that, right? So lots of different fun things you could do with this pattern. And I'm going to walk you through it step by step. And let's get started. So here are the three foundations for this project. And guess what? I printed these directly right onto a mid-weight tearaway stabilizer that I cut at 8.5 by 11 for my printer. Y'all, this stuff was made to sew through and to tear away nice and easily. So that's what I did. I printed right on my tearaway stabilizer. And we're going to go ahead and separate the three foundations, just cutting them out a little bit beyond the outside line. And this right here is the mirror image. If you are hand tracing onto fusible, you can trace this image and then fuse your letters right on the back side of your fabric. So we have our three foundations, and I'm going to go ahead and start by fusing down all of my letters that I cut out on the scan and cut with the SVG. Now to do that, I'm going to use my light pad. And I'm going to use the middle foundation as my placement guide and my Elmer's glue stick. And I'm going to temporarily, with the glue stick, bond these letters in place using my light pad so that they're perfectly placed in this panel, right? And then I'll fuse them with my iron because they do have heat and bond light on the back side. But the glue stick just keeps them in place while I can just use that as a placement guide. So I have my letters bonded to that middle panel, and I have glued my 3 panels together, but you could certainly do these independently, 3 different foundations, and then remove the paper and piece them together. So I've cut all of my fabric strips according to the front page of the pattern, and the very first one, I just like to glue stick in place so it doesn't shift. And I'm going to dry that glue with my iron before moving on so that that first fabric stays in place. And then we're just adding fabric strips right to that first one. The first one goes on the back side of the paper with the right side facing up, right? And every one after that is placed right side facing down. I'm going to go ahead and sew with a really short stitch length. I think I used a 1.0 and sewed right on the line. And that's what I love about foundation paper piecing is I could piece this with just a regular 1/4 inch presser foot, right? And just piece this together. But the foundation gives me printed straight lines. And that's how I know I'm going to get straight lines when I'm sewing, right? I just find it so helpful to have that straight line as a guide. So I'm just going to go through and bring you along as I piece each one of these strips on there. It also just allows me to listen to like an audiobook or music, and I don't have to like really focus on sewing straight lines, but yet my project comes out exactly perfect. Here recently, I have realized that using a clapper while I'm pressing my seams really helps them lay down so much flatter. Do you think? Have you tried one yet? So I'm just going through and adding each one of the strips. There's 5 on the top, and then we piece in the middle section, and then there's 5 strips at the bottom. And that makes up the complete top. That's it. So I'm just making sure that I get that middle panel in there exactly lined up, because I want my words to be right in the center of that middle panel. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and press that seam and then add the 5 strips at the bottom. I have thought of all kinds of fun different things that you can say in the middle of these panels. I don't think I have enough time in the days to keep making more, but I really want to. So I think you could arrange your strips. You could do 10 totally different fabrics for all your strips. For mine, I like doing 5 different strips at the top and repeating those 5 different same fabrics at the bottom, and like the reverse order of what I did at the top. And I think that looks really nice. My mom gave me these fabrics for Christmas, and this is my first time using them. I think they're so pretty. So just going through. I think if you were to line these up and have like 4 or 5 projects going, you could certainly chain piece, one back to back to back, and knock out several of these tops pretty quickly. So there's my last strip. And once you've added the last strip, we're going to press that seam, and then we're going to go ahead and trim up all the extra fabric using the back side, right? We'll flip this over. Isn't that cool? We'll flip it over, and I'm going to use a ruler and my rotary cutter, and I'm going to match up the inside line to the 1/4 inch line on my ruler and just square up and trim up this project. Now I'm going to use my little pokey tool from the Dollar Tree, y'all, and just score these sewing lines. And that tearaway stabilizer just comes right off. You could, of course, if you don't have tearaway stabilizer, you could just use normal printing paper. That's what I usually do. But the last couple projects, I've Just use tearaway stabilizer and it comes off really easy. So let's go ahead and make the hanger for this project. I'm going to start by adding a little bit of glue stick, and I got a section of file folder because it gives me a nice straight edge. And I'm going to fold over about half of an inch on both short sides, and I glue stick that down. And you can just dry the glue with your iron real quick, and that gives you a nice straight folded edge. And we're going to have a little hanger just like this. You could put a dowel right through there. So before I do that though, I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and just do a straight stitch, permanently sewing down those folded edges. So I just do a straight stitch on both sides. Now we're going to fold this in half and give it a press. Sorry about my bright cell phone sitting right there. I had a conversation going while I was trying to make this project. Now I'm just going to find the center of the top of my project and the center of my hanger, and I'm going to just pin it right to the top. So the folded edge is going in towards the project and the raw edges is lined up towards the outside. So I'm going to create the layers of my project, and I'm going to lay down the quilt batting first, and then the back of my project with the right side facing up, and then just center my quilt top with the right side facing down. And I'm just going to add a couple pins just to keep this in place as we bring it to the sewing machine, just to keep it from shifting around. I'm going to leave a little opening at the bottom, so I'm going to just mark that opening so I don't forget with 2 pins right there. I'm going to bring this over to the sewing machine again, and I'm going to sew all the way around. You could sew it with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm using, a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance right here. Something else I've started doing is marking my little corners and doing a diagonal corner stitch at my corners, just reinforcing those corners so that when I poke them out, I don't have to worry about my pokey tool going through the corner. See that little diagonal stitch? Sometimes I think I can be a little bit too aggressive with my pokey tool, and I have poked right through the corner of some of my projects. And that's a real bummer because you've done all this work up until that point, right? So at the opening, we just want to make sure to do a back stitch at the beginning and the end. And that's going to help keep those seams closed at the opening as we turn this right side out. Now I'm just using my file folder edge again, just to fold that fabric over and glue it down so I have a nice clean opening at the bottom of my project. And then I'm going to trim away, leaving a little less than 1/4 of an inch of extra material beyond the sewing line. Just a little bit smaller than 1/4 of an inch. And we're going to turn this project right side out and poke out those corners. It's a super, super easy project. Now you'll see I'm taking my chopstick and I'm poking out my corners. And because I did that little diagonal stitch, I did not poke through any of my corners. I'm going to glue stick that opening closed and just give those outside edges, those outside seams a little press. Just make them a little bit flatter. And now we're going to bring this over to the sewing machine again, just to finish this project up. I like to start by doing a straight stitch around the entire outside. That's going to sew together our opening at the bottom, but blend in that sewing if we do it all the way around the project. And for this one, I did a stitch in the ditch, between the 3 panels. Now for the letters. Because I used Heat and Bond Light, I need to sew down my letters. So I put on my free motion foot, and I was going to outline just on the inside of each one of the letters with a straight stitch. You could do a little tiny zigzag stitch. You could do a tiny little satin stitch. You could do what I'm doing here with a free motion foot and going inside of each one of the letters. Or watch this. I'm just going to do a meandering stitch over this entire middle panel, and it will sew down my letters. And I decided to do this because, y'all, this is going to be a project that's really not going to be washed. It's going to be hung on a refrigerator or put on a stand or hung on a wall. And how many times do you wash your wall quilts, right? So the meandering stitch over top of the letters permanently puts them in place. They're bonded with Heat and Bond Light, so they're not going to go anywhere, right? If you did wash this project, though, guaranteed the edges would fray and probably lift over time anywhere that the meandering stitch did not stitch down. Do you know what I'm saying? So I would only really recommend doing that on projects that you know aren't really going to be used and washed. Then I put back on my regular foot, and for this particular little wall quilt, I did a stitch in the ditch in between each one of my little fabric strips there. Some of my projects I did this with, some of them I didn't. Each one I've done a little bit differently. So there's my meandering stitch on the back side. And that saved me a whole lot of time sewing down those little letters. See that? I've adopted a new name for these projects as my little perimenopause projects. If you make these, I'd love to see it. I'd love to see what you do on the inside panel of your little quilts. You can share pictures over on the Creative Crew. We'd all love to see it. Until I see you next time, have a great week.